ultimately, transparency, and we go back to this, it starts with being transparent with yourself. Because then from there, you can determine, where do I feel comfortable being transparent in other aspects of my life? Hi, and welcome to another awesome episode of the Heart Leader Podcast, where heart and mind align. I am your host, Amber, and Austin and I are here to kick off the great topic of transparency throughout the entire month of April. And when we talk about transparency, we mean like really being willing to look at ourselves, to look at the really interesting and maybe things that we don't always want to look at out in our communities and our families, because that's the way that we can actually do something about it. And not in a way that we're going to fight about it, but in a way that we're actually inquisitive about it. And we say, all right, look, we see what's happening. What can we do? Do we like it? Do we not like it? What can we do to improve it, even if we do like it? Because that's how we create progress, we create evolution, we create growth. And so that's really where we want to start. And that's where our journal is all focused around, the transparency journal. It's like, how do we get ego, which we've already talked about so far this year, kind of balanced and in a direction where we can even go and look at things in a transparent way and not take an ego hit of, oh, well, that means that I'm awful because I didn't already take care of that. So when we look at it, especially in today's day and age of like social media, and we talk about this all the time, but I know I didn't grow up in the era of social media and filters, but I did grow up in the era of getting magazines and, you know, every person in there was touched up in some way, but we didn't necessarily know that. So we were striving for perfection, especially as a female, in a way that almost seemed unattainable. And it wasn't transparent to us that those were actually touched up photos. We thought that's the way that people were supposed to look. Then I got into the industry and I would get some of my photos back and I'm like, that's not what I looked like. And I was shocked. And so then I needed to start being transparent with these younger people coming into the industry and saying, look, don't starve yourself. Don't do these things because it's not healthy. And they're just going to touch up the photos anyway. So as someone who did come up with social media, how did that impact you as far as transparency went?
Yeah, it's so Facebook kind of came online my senior year of high school, and but right before then was MySpace, and that was really the big start. I didn't quite understand MySpace, because it was so new. I don't think really anyone did. It was an odd, interesting thing, but we were kind of, it was like sophomore, junior year of high school was kind of MySpace, and it was mainly about just having your own music on your page or something like that, and just, friends, and it just wasn't really evolved yet. And so it wasn't, and the reason why I'm presenting that is because it wasn't integrated into our social lives at scale yet. Yeah. And then when Facebook came along, I remember really focusing and getting on Facebook in between my senior year and freshman year of college. And so it's like, that's when it kind of started to grow. And it was like, oh, I can meet all these people that I'm about to meet in a few months. Like I can meet them in May, and I can actually like start to create a relationship or like a friendship, or like so I got like my dorm. So my roommate, like I was able to connect with him beforehand. So I was thinking, oh, this is so cool. Right. And that's how like the energy behind it in the beginning like that was awesome. Because it was a real like share and connect, and I got to meet people. And so by the time I stepped onto campus freshman year, like I had friends. Like it didn't feel like I was going and didn't know anyone. So I thought that was really, really helpful. But over the years, that shifted. The way that people used social media became unintentionally, it became a space where you could start to see this, like you're projecting a life, a lifestyle. And, and in college, not everyone has like a lifestyle in college, but what you were doing is you're projecting the best version, the best moments of your life, which, granted, anyone wants to do. I mean, we naturally understand that. It's not a bad thing, right? But it becomes a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And when you start to realize that, now, I mean, years later, that has evolved into something where people, when we see people's posts, we see touched up photos, or we see, I mean, even now you see like maybe someone's like in a private jet, but the reality is they're actually not. And so there's all of this illusion of this grandiose life or this grandiose experience, and when it's not actually happening. And so when people are so focused on living and projecting this lifestyle to others that they're not actually living, that's where it becomes an issue. And that's where I feel like transparency in this theme fits perfectly with this, because, now that social media companies are showing so much about, hey, we've got all this data and all the back end stuff. And we're saying, okay, well, we need the transparency from you. Yet the users aren't being transparent about themselves. So it's this unique kind of dichotomy, if not hypocrisy, in terms of that. So yeah, I really want to kind of dive into that today.
Yeah. We are, as a collective whole, becoming more and more kind of demanding of businesses and even governments about, okay, we want transparency. We want to know, US government, have you actually been around UFOs? Give us the UFO data. And businesses, we want more financial transparency so that we know. US government, we want transparency on tax dollars and tax spending. But you're right.
Which is good.
It's great.
That's great.
We need that 100%. But at the same time, you're right. We're going backward ourselves with being willing to be wholly transparent with where we are. Now, I do want to play the other side of that. We always say we need to be willing to look toward the life we desire to create. There is some justification to say, like, look, if I desire to have a private jet, then I need to know what it feels like to have a private jet so I can create that experience. Mm-hmm. But what I hear you saying is there's a difference between saying hashtag life I desire versus saying, hey, look at me, I'm in this private jet, when you're not actually in the private jet. Because what we're creating then is, then we get these other people who are following what we're posting, and they're like, everybody else's life is great. Everybody else's life is great. Mine sucks.
Yeah.
And that's not true. Everybody has something going on. We all do. Now, scale is what differs, but everybody has something that's going on in their life right now. And so for us to not be willing to be transparent enough. Now, I'm not saying that we should all go out on social media and say, this is what's going on in my life right now.
Yes.
But if we could be a little more transparent and say, this is what I desire my life to be, or even through the struggle, I'm still finding the beauty, so that we can at least show that we're human and that we are willing to say, you know what, life can be tough. It can be tough. But even when it's tough, I'm still finding the beauty.
Right.
That sends a different message.
Yes.
And that's you being transparent, but not putting everything out there in a way that's saying, but let me tell you all my problems at the same time. And I feel like that's kind of the message that you're conveying.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I remember when your niece, Kara, and her friend were on and they were having this this great conversation, being very transparent about, they see social media and they're in college right now, right?
Yeah.
And so they look and, they're getting ready to get out into the adult world. And it's like, you see all these people on social media and they have all these things. They're like, that doesn't even seem attainable. Like, how do you go from zero to that? When there's no real representation of in between. And so that's kind of, I thought that was such a unique perspective because I didn't have that when I was their age, and Instagram and Facebook were kind of just coming online. Like Instagram when I was in college was really about taking cool photos. Like that was it. It wasn't about, money or success or, even honestly, and there's some great things on Instagram. I don't want to put it down all the way because like there's some great training or, great, hey, we do our best to put out good information out there, right?
Yeah.
But so not knocking it down in any way, shape or form, but just to highlight what's trending, it was very different. When I was in college or just out of college, it was really like artsy photos or, like if you were using filters, it was to like if you had a cool landscape, it was to like make this unique experience of what it looked like. It wasn't to, you kind of knew it was like, you knew it was a filter, but that was like cool, and then it kind of became where filters got so good that people almost didn't want others to know that there is a filter. And I think that's where it starts to get that slippery slope. And we start to take away the authenticity of wanting to be creative and artistic and put something out there that, if I took a photo, like I'm not a photographer. And so the first couple times I did it, I was like, I kind of felt vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like it was like, cool, I got to do something that like, I have an iPhone and I can take this awesome picture, things I never thought. And I actually kind of enjoyed it. I'm not anticipating selling a bunch of photos. Like that's not what I got into, but it was like, oh, cool. This was I captured a moment that I felt artistic and it felt expressive and creative. And then I got to use cool filters to like enhance that.
Yeah.
Fun. Awesome. But when it shifts into something away from that, where it's like, I want to project a version of me that is not actually who I am, to the point where if you met me in person, I don't look anything like the photos. That, that's where I feel like it starts to become, difficult. And
even the lifestyle, like not only do I not look like that, but then if you come into my lifestyle and you get to know me, my lifestyle isn't like that.
Right.
And so then you get back into, okay, I haven't been authentic and I haven't been transparent. And so now I desire you to know me, but you don't know me at all.
Yeah.
And I know you referenced, the interview or the discussion I had with Kara on here. And both of them talked about the fact that, at this stage, we know that people don't put their actual lives on social media, which we understand that. But if that's become a socially acceptable thing, let's be transparent and ask, is that okay?
Yeah.
So now have we just become entertainment value?
Mm-hmm.
Have we taken our lives and become entertainment value for one another? And are we okay with that? Because if we are, okay. And that's okay. But then how do you start to decipher who's okay with that and putting it out as entertainment value and who's choosing not to?
Yeah.
So who's being authentic and vulnerable and who's not? And for anyone who is transitioning and coming into social media because they're coming to a certain age and their parents are allowing them to or whatever, talk about a confusing landscape. How's someone going to know? And so we have to begin when we talk about this whole transparency, and then we have the vulnerability and the ego and all the other tools that we kind of lump in together, it all comes together. But staying with transparency, we have to transparently ask ourselves, what am I okay with?
Yes. That's a good point. What do I desire to put out there? And, if authentically you desire to create entertainment value, okay. That's fine. At least you know, and there's intention behind it, and there's purpose, and that's fine. But if it doesn't align, if you are doing that, it's like, you know what, actually, I'm just doing it because, X, Y, and Z external reason.
Yeah.
Maybe an opportunity to adjust and see if you don't feel wholly yourself, that might be a reason. Oftentimes when we don't, and I trust me, I'm saying this because I know this immensely, when we don't feel like ourselves, a vast majority of the time it's because of our own choices and our own decisions and how we are approaching the world. And so that's our opportunity to take that step back, put a mirror in our face and say, is this really who we are? And is this who we desire to show up as? And so for me, it was a no from what I was doing. And it was an opportunity to adjust and be like, no, I want to take a different path. I want to actually create a path that is aligned with me, that I know that I won't feel like I'm going into the unknown, that I feel like I'm carving a path that for me, in many ways, feels like it's always been there. And it just feels like it's kind of lighting its way as it moves forward. And because I'm the light, I'm not looking for something outside of myself to light that path. I'm only going to find darkness when it's that way. But when I'm the light, I know that no matter what path I take, I'm bringing the light to it, and it will always be there.
Incredibly well said. But again, it goes back to how then do we become transparent with ourselves? Because that requires that we sit down and we say, why am I doing this? Why am I feeling like the life I have isn't enough to put out there? Why is it that I need to create something if I'm not doing it for entertainment value? If I'm just doing it because everyone else is doing it. And if I desire social media followers or I desire to be heard at all, then I need to do what everyone else is doing. Why are you feeling like you need to do that versus doing it your own way, being authentic to you and allowing that to draw to you the people who are meant to be drawn to you?
Yeah.
I had to go through that myself because I, of course, coming through multiple industries and even like friends, social circles, there's always pressure to fit in, right? And it's because we're pack animals. Mm-hmm. We really desire the social communal aspect. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we're meant to create a new approach. There's always those groups that it takes that first person to say, okay, maybe we should ask why it's always been done this way. Because it doesn't really feel like this is working anymore. And be willing to test out new waters.
Yeah.
And it's not always going to work. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
But at least you can test out new things. And eventually you're going to find your flow and what fits for you because you're being transparent with yourself and you're being authentic to yourself. And you're saying, did that work? Okay, maybe not. And you're moving on to the next thing. Did that fit right for me? Maybe not. And it does require engaging in different social settings and different things. But each time you're learning something new about yourself and you're being transparent and authentic with yourself about how it actually resonated with you. You're not shoehorning yourself into something that doesn't fit. You're saying, okay, I can take something from this, but then I can create something that's my own. Because the moment you do that, you may find everyone else has been looking for that too. They just didn't know how to create it.
Yes.
So you don't have to shoehorn yourself into things on social media or outside of social media. We keep talking about social media because it's, man, that's a wide open platform.
Yes.
But even outside of that,
sure.
When we started Suivera, in all transparency, since it's the topic and we keep saying it, nobody really understood what we were out to do. They're like, You want to create a movement of love and help people connect with their heart. Okay, isn't that what religion does? Well, yeah, but there's more to it than that. How do we come together beyond our religions in our everyday? And what about those who aren't necessarily engaged in a faith-based system, but still desire to have the same connection? What we're doing is saying we're going to go beyond what is different about us and join together as a common language of love, so that it doesn't matter which religion, which culture, whatever it is that we feel keeps us separated. Love is flowing through each and every one of those things. So why don't we go to the one common denominator and use that to help us all communicate with one another? But first, we have to understand how to invoke that within ourselves. And so the more that we would explain what we're doing, the more that we held our ground, the more people were like, oh, okay, yes. Okay, so you're not asking me to change my faith. You're not asking me to change who I am. You're not asking me to force myself into your model. You're asking me to expand myself within my model using what you bring forward from all these other groups. I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it took us knowing who we were and transparently coming back to that and saying, is what they're saying to us, can we take anything from it? Yes or no?
Yep.
Okay. Then if it doesn't fit, we appreciate your guidance, but we need to stay with where our hearts tell us. Mm-hmm. Or if it does provide solid feedback, we need to integrate that. We need to go back to the ego part, not have an overinflated ego thinking we know everything, and pull ourselves back in.
Yeah. Right. I love everything you just said, and there's so much truth, and I really appreciate that. And I think you're right. I mean, yeah, a lot of these faiths and religions, that's what they were designed for. But after thousands of years, like, I'm sorry, there just isn't a Facebook parable, or there's not like Instagram 316. Like, it's not like you can start quoting, like we live in a different life 2, 3, 4,000 years later, depending on which faith and system you may believe in. Or if you don't have any faith, then you need to be life is still happening right now, regardless of whatever you believe in. And so there needs to be some type of information around, well, I'm a human now. How do I interact with the world, and how do I interact with myself? It really is that simple. Now, as you were saying, there's beautiful models all around what that could look like. I mean, that's what is so brilliant, I feel, about humanity, is because there's limitless possibility of how we desire to interact and connect. And so Sui Vera is this organization that can help facilitate that. And I love that. I mean, the love as the common language, as we say it, transcends humans, plants, animals, earth, universe. It brings it all together. Everyone and everything understands love. It literally can affect the very molecules of water. That's incredible, especially when we know that water is pretty much what this entire planet is made out of. So, it really is amazing. And so that's why we do desire to focus on transparency and focus on, not from a let's get you
mm-hmm.
or gotcha transparency approach, because then we're really just using that. To me, that's using transparency as a weapon to hurt another.
Yes.
Now, if we can say, like, hey, maybe this isn't the best of things, if our goal of humanity is to evolve and move forward, so we need to be transparent, and these things that are occurring aren't doing that. They're actually either keeping us the same, or even holding us back. well, then those are conflicting ideologies. No wonder we're in disharmony. So when we can utilize transparency as a tool to, whether that's an individual, a community, governmental, organizational, planetary, any of that, we can use transparency as a tool to give us that time to see what's actually happening, what's working, what's not, and then adjust so that we can move forward and evolve forward. Then that to me feels in harmony. It feels in alignment.
But I'm glad you brought up as a weapon, because I mean, any tool, let's just be honest, any tool can be a tool or a weapon.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel, I mean, again, we always go back. The only experience I can talk from is the one that I have, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times being transparent can create an approach where it can be used against you, right? Because I've been open and transparent. I've let you in, I've let you see. And then someone can, or something, an agency or whatever, can turn around and utilize that information in a way that is not uplifting to you. What would you say about that? Because are we saying you should be transparent about everything in your life? Where do you know how to be transparent and how not to be transparent? Are we saying go out on all of these? We saying go out on TikTok and walk around your house and say, this is where I live. Look how awesome. Or are there times and places to be transparent? And how would someone know?
It's a very good question. And I don't know if there's a specific answer. I feel like what we are seeking to provide as an organization, and we're not the only ones by any means, but what we are and what others like us are attempting to bring forward are the tools to help people understand that for a change. And I think that just hasn't been a focus point. First and foremost, transparency to me brings up responsibility. Because the moment you're transparent, you have to take responsibility for whatever action you're bringing forward. So if you're embarrassed about it, or you're not aligned with it, or you want to hide it, well, that's probably an area you need to be transparent. Not always. Everything I'm saying is not an always, because there may be certain things like, hey, if I'm going through something personally and I feel really, really like, hey, I don't want to go on Facebook Live or Instagram or YouTube Live or whatever, and then live stream me, crying or going through something that I don't even understand. Look, I get and maybe someone might do that. I'm not telling someone not to do something. I'm just saying for me, that doesn't feel aligned. I don't feel like I would be I don't want to be transparent about something that I don't even understand yet, nor do I know if I feel aligned about it yet.
Yeah.
And so maybe I might have that experience in private and really flow through it and then seek to understand it and connect with it and see how I move forward. And then maybe on a podcast, which I've done before, is talk about it, or in a video or a training or a workshop that we do. We talk about those things. Then I'm know that I'm willing to be transparent about it, because I feel confident and comfortable in and of myself that I understand it and I can explain it and I can utilize it as a tool to hopefully maybe assist others, someone else that may be going through a similar thing.
And so ultimately, transparency, and we go back to this, it starts with being transparent with yourself. Because then from there, you can determine, where do I feel comfortable being transparent in other aspects of my life? Because not everyone's going to have access to doing a podcast or a training, but you have access to a loved one or a friend or someone that will go back to your point of, if in your life you had times when you were not feeling good about some of your actions. And so that's where you started, was being transparent about, okay, then why? Why am I not feeling good about this? Why would I be embarrassed if somebody else knew this? about me. You first had to be transparent within you to say, all right, this seems to be getting a response outside of me to fit into the norm, but I don't feel good about this. Why don't I feel good about this? What is creating inner conflict within me so that I can resolve this? Then I can talk with someone that I care about to kind of bounce this off of them, to be transparent about what I'm navigating so that I can get an external view. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's as far as you go in transparency. And that's good. That's a good use of the tool, especially from a heart leader perspective. Because if you share that, could be that the other person is going through something very similar. Or that they know someone else who's going through something similar. So they get the opportunity to really talk it through with you and understand, hey, look, I know that this can't be easy. Or if they can't do it with you, like, let's go the other side of it. They're indifferent, or they just can't hear what you have to say because it triggers something in them. Because that could happen too. Then you know, okay, this isn't about me. This has triggered something in them. And so now my transparency is putting them in a place where they have to be transparent and authentic with where they are. But I have to figure out what that means to me in another transparent way. And so, like, the cycle just has to continue. It's another tool in our toolbox. So it doesn't mean you have to go on social media and say, hey, I just had this talk with my friend and they weren't able to handle this, so now I don't know what to do. I mean, you can, but you're probably not going to get a ton of support. It's more of an internal thing. And the more that you do that, the more that you know what to do. Or you can be transparent with communities like the one we have, where transparency is already built into the program. We know that we're here to support each other. We know that we're here in those vulnerable moments to help each other. But you have to create that threshold for, where do I feel comfortable being vulnerable, but I at least have to start with myself. I at least have to be willing to look at myself and know where to begin. And that starts with questions like you just brought up, which is, why do I not feel comfortable with some of my behaviors? If that's the case, why do I not feel comfortable in certain social settings or in certain experiences? And what does that mean for me going forward? Do I keep doing them? Do I not keep doing them? How do I desire to navigate my life? Because wherever you go, it's because you've chosen to go there. Your life is an outcome of your choices.
Yes.
Period. And so if you are feeling uncomfortable or things are not navigating the way you desire, you have to be transparent and then go, okay, I need to make different choices. How do I do that? And that's where the other tools start coming in. Is it my ego? Am I not being my authentic self? All of those other things start piling in.
Very well said. That's why responsibility is such a key aspect on a personal level. The more transparent you are, the more you're taking responsibility for your actions and your thoughts and your beliefs and all that kind of make up who you are. The more transparent you are, the more I feel like there's I'm kind of cutting myself off because I almost feel like there's a direct correlation between like a lot. I know some clients and people that we've been hearing about recently is like giving the power away. And it's so easy to do that when you're not willing to be transparent with yourself. The more transparent with yourself that you are, I feel like the more you pull that power back in and you start to enhance that inner power. And so I guess the word is you empower yourself. Yeah. And it's amazing what transparency can do because you take responsibility for your actions and what's going on in your world. And that gives you immense confidence and immense security and immense understanding, because you're bringing more intention and purpose into what you do. And then you're taking responsibility for those actions. Not everything is going to be perfect. Not everything's going to come out exactly the way you want it. That's not what I'm saying. But
no.
Being willing to test it out and experience it and understand it. I mean, to me, like, that's the whole fun of life. That's the whole experience of life. And sometimes we just have to realize that we are unconsciously testing life in a way that we don't actually desire to. That's a crazy transparency, in a beautiful way. It's like when you can, that's where I was. And when you can have that type of transparency with yourself, then it completely transforms your entire life.
And ultimately, I feel like when we talk about empowering ourselves, when we get to a point of, for me, my rule of thumb, I will answer any question. I am fully transparent. That doesn't mean I'm going to put everything out there, right? But ultimately, my life is an open book. And I have nothing that, people fear the skeletons in their closet. And so then you operate from that place of fear. What if someone finds this out about me? What if my partner, my friends, the society as a whole finds this out about me? This mistruth that I told, or this action that I took. But if we're not fearful of anything, if we're just willing to say, I'm human, I've had experiences in my life. You know what? I was not perfect. I made plenty of mistakes that got me the experience to get me to where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't need to put my whole life story out on display.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how I'm choosing to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also not going to hide anything.
Right.
If you have questions about my life, about what led me to where I'm at, I'll answer any single one of them, because I am not afraid of any choice or any action I took that led me here. And that helps you become empowered, because the fear that is tied around your ankle and holding you back in your past is gone. You're no longer anchored to your past.
Love that.
And so you're not your past anymore. You are an outcome of every experience you had, but you are not tied to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's so helpful when it comes to vulnerability. And to me, when you talk about governments and businesses and how we're asking more and more societies to say, be transparent, that's really what we're asking for too. Like, I don't care what mistakes have been made in any one of our governmental or organizational institutes. Everybody starts and everything starts somewhere. But if you're so secretive that you have to hold it all back, now, obviously, there are patents and things like that. We don't want everyone taking everyone else's intellectual property. But we also need to know, as a society, are you releasing harmful chemicals into our ecosystem? Are you not disclosing some of the financial implications that could crash our global economy? Like, these are things that we need to know before they're irreversible. And so if you let us know, yeah, we're probably going to be a little bit ticked off. Mm-hmm. No lie. But at least we can do something as a global collective to do remediation and help before it gets too far. Yeah. Otherwise, we're all in a deeper pot that we may not be able to get out of. So the more these organizations are stepping forward and saying, okay, we're going to reduce our carbon footprint because, yeah, we know we really released way too much into the atmosphere. So now we're going to help pull back and we're going to take those steps. People are a little more forgiving and they're saying, okay, You're going to do something to remedy the issue you created. We can be on board with that, right? So there's transparency in that.
Yeah. And on a personal level, I mean, how many times are we, when it comes to whether, like with a friend, if a friend came to us and said, hey, this and this happened, I'm really sorry, and this is what I'm going to do to remedy that moving forward. I bet a lot of like drama or miscommunication and all those things would just start to really fall away. And same if I were to go to say that to a friend or a partner or business or romantic or anything like that, just be willing to just say, hey, I really messed up there. Or hey, these things I did in the past, like now that I have that understanding, like I want to make a different change moving forward, and here's what I'm going to do that. Can you please keep me accountable? Can you please help me? Those kind of things. I mean, man, how many conflicts would go away because transparency is used as a tool in that format? And how many miscommunications, how much drama would just all fall away because we're just willing to be real. And that's really what transparency is. It's access into the actual truth. It really is truth in many ways.
At least an understanding of a situation.
Sure.
Because for me, I always say truth is perspective, right? But at least in that case, we all know what it feels like to be told one thing and then you discover something else is also occurring under the surface. And then you're just like, why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you just tell me? Because I would have helped you. I would have been there for you. But now I don't feel like I can trust you. So trust is lost. And it's going to take a lot to build that trust back up. And so, yes, it leads to your point of, okay, if you just give me, even if you don't have your full action plan, I can even deal with that because then we can co-create that together.
Sure.
Maybe I have some insights that would help, or others would have insights that could assist. But at least I'm not discovering it on my own. And then I don't know if I can trust you or not because you're not being forthright and transparent. So if we begin to do these just simple acts of understanding when, again, we don't need to be transparent in everything. Not everyone needs to know all of our business. It's just, there are just some things we just don't need to share.
Yeah.
But in the things that it is important in, it's a very good tool to begin to hone, and it's individualized. But we all know, like if we go into our heart, talking about heart leaders, we all know there's a feeling when you know, maybe I should tell my partner about this because it impacts their life. Or maybe I should disclose this because it could impact others. There's a knowing that goes beyond just the intellect that goes in there. And that's why we talk about aligning heart and mind. Like if your heart is calling you that much, there's a reason. Listen to it.
Yes.
Because even if your brain is saying, but I might lose some money if I do that right now. Okay, so losing a little money now or losing all respect later, well, you're going to lose a lot more money when you lose all respect later. Listen to your heart.
I love that. And that kind of leads me to, I know my first part was about responsibility. The second thing that to me transparency evokes is witnessing the humanity in another and yourself. And I feel like what you just said really encapsulates that. Because when we are transparent, much like vulnerability and authenticity, when we are transparent, it feels like transparency becomes a byproduct of a balanced ego. It's like, and that's why we've kind of put it in this order of like, hey, we need to understand our authenticity, right? And then by taking the time to seek to understand it, we're being vulnerable. And oh, wow, that might bring up some ego. So we need to make sure we're balanced in our ego, whether it's over or under, like really pull that in and start to find balance. And through that, then we can really be transparent with ourselves. So there's like a flow and a purpose behind that approach. And so when we are invoking transparency, I feel like that's our way to see the humanity in ourselves and recognize like, hey, the perfection's not in the result, but in the process of being human, in the process of having experience, in the process of living life. And so, and when we can do that for ourselves, well, then maybe we can start to be more forgiving to others, because we can recognize, well, yeah, that's what everyone's going through right now.
Yeah.
And that we can't put, if we know we're not perfect, then we can't place that expectation on someone else. So when someone else is seeking to be transparent and share to them, well, share to you, like, okay, hey, I see you. I honor you. I recognize you. I see that you are just like me, and I'm here for that. I connect with that. I feel the humanity in that.
Is there anything else in the area of vulnerability outside of the journal? Sorry, transparency.
Yeah, talking about a lot of
I'm
things
being
today.
vulnerable. In the area of transparency outside of the journal that you would like to share before we chat a little bit about the tools and the resources, because, we share all of the reasons to own these skills, but we also want to make sure people know that we have a plethora of resources for them, just like going to the gym and working out your body. We want to make sure that we have the ability to work out these attributes, these skill sets that can make us stronger in life, as you say, empower us throughout our days, our weeks, our years, to have the life we desire.
And there's always more than a couple things, and given timing, I'll do my best to just tone it down. So I could talk with you for hours, But I would say there's so much opportunity for us to be transparent with ourselves, recognizing that society has not set us up to be transparent with ourselves. We were not given the tools growing up to learn how to do that, to learn how to be that. I'm not negating that, hey, we need math, we need to learn how to read, we need to learn. Those things are very, very helpful in life. But maybe when I was 5 years old, instead of learning math, maybe the best thing I could have done is learn how to understand myself. Maybe learning about how to be positive. Maybe learning how to have emotional clarity. Like when I'm feeling, how many young kids are feeling emotions and, they just kind of blurt it out, right? It's obviously usually not okay as an adult to do that, because it's been suppressed over so many things because we haven't been taught how to manage them. So that type of transparency, like in full transparency, we're all not equipped. And so that's an opportunity for us to step back and say, okay, yeah, I need these tools. And it's okay to need these tools. It's okay to say, I need help here. Because you only have upside to gain. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. We're not saying it's just, rainbows and puppies. Although on the other side, maybe.
Feels like rainbows and puppies, not going to lie.
Right? And so, yeah, I feel like that's just, for me, is like a really big thing. That's why I feel so passionate about that. And I know that's why you do. And that's why the people in our community are building and growing in this and recognizing that. And it's a way for us. Imagine how would we interact as a species if from the very youngest age, we were taught to see the humanity in ourselves and in those around us. How much of that conflict, how much of that miscommunication, how much of that misunderstanding would go away, and how much of our interaction with ourselves and those around us for the rest of our lives be altered because of that?
Taught to embrace it instead of overcome it.
And not to fight it.
Yeah.
Because if you're constantly in a fight, well, no wonder that's how you approach everyone else.
Yeah.
Internal disharmony creates external disharmony.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why transparency is so important, I feel. It's massively changed my life. And it's just something that but the beauty of transparency is that it just, as you were saying earlier in this, it just continues to expand. You may feel like, okay, I'm as transparent as I can be, and then something occurs, and then it creates another level of that. And that's what's, to me, is so beautiful about transparency. That's kind of what I meant about truth, is you can still continue to unveil truth as you expand. And in many ways, that's what transparency does. And there's kind of like a beautiful tie in there. And maybe we can talk about that on another podcast or something. But yeah, I feel like that's, to me, is kind of like the last focus for today that I just kind of want to bring about, is just, this is why we're doing this. This is why we have these tools. And we're here. We are absolutely here to help.
Yes. And I think that's another key point, is sincerely, we need a support system as we navigate through many of these different inner reflections, right? Yeah, we have to start with ourselves. But you need a group of like-hearted individuals that you know are not going to throw stones at you for where you are on your journey, that have been in at least a similar, because we all go through our own unique spaces.
Yeah.
But at least if they've been in a similar space, they can say, yes, I understand. And I can be here to listen and have compassion. And so when you have 1.1 million people, you're going to find your little group that is going to really resonate with where you are, no matter where it is. And so I think it's really important that we leverage this amazing group that we have, that has come together for this whole global coherence movement that we have going on.
Right. And if you can't find the group, then the tools that we have are designed to empower you to create the group, to enhance the community. So either way, it's a win.
So take a moment, if you wouldn't mind now, to just share what we have available. Because in full transparency from our side, I don't know that we've done a great job of, on this podcast, sharing everything that we have from a resource standpoint available to our community. Right.
Yeah. So we just created a membership called the Heart Leader Headquarters, Heart Leader HQ. The purpose behind that was to, as we are heart leaders, that everything starts from the heart, that no matter what we do, like, our heart is our headquarters. That's where we're going to keep going back, right? And we can use our heart and say, okay, if we have this feeling or this understanding or this way of life from here, then we can pop up to our head to use our intellect and then create an action plan to move forward, right? It's that combination, and use our gut for intuition. And yeah, exactly. And so our heart being our headquarters, it's literally, that's just kind of naturally where we feel that, right? And so inside the headquarters, we have tons and tons of different tools, and it's everything on what we talked about. How do you connect with your body? I mean, how many people out there right now are not taking the time to understand and connect with their body when there's in pain or inflammation, or they know they don't feel their best selves, and they're not equipped with the understanding on how to connect with their body and even know that that they could feel better.
Yes.
As an athlete, I wish I would have known that, because it would have really prevented a massive injury in my life that I'm still in many ways dealing with, years and years, over a decade later, right? So that's for one. And then two, mentally, how to create a positive mental mind frame. When, as you were saying, when we are so focused, like naturally, like our natural brain bias is 3 times more focused on the negative side. We can have a positive mental mind frame that is set in that way, that can overcome that negative bias, and we can create a positive bias. But we just need to learn how to do that and create a habit and make that a point, and recognize that some negative brain bias is important. We're not saying eliminate it, because there's opportunity for that negative brain bias to reframe something, and then you can take that and then understand the positive aspects of it. Great. Awesome. Well, how do you do that? Yes. And then emotionally, as we were just talking about, and hey, we're not kids anymore. So at least not all of us, right? So maybe at heart, great. But we're not kids. So, okay, what do we do now? That way I still have these emotions. I'm always going to have emotions. How do we manage them? How do we not allow them to create a spiral for ourselves? How do we not allow them to overtake us, and then we make actions that we will regret later that may actually ruin friendships or relationships or businesses or any things that we actually didn't even desire to do or experience. So how do we balance and create that understanding of our own emotions so we don't let them overtake us, but we can actually direct our own emotions to experience life the way that is in harmony with who we are and what's around us? And then spiritually, what does that even mean? Like, what are we into? With so many different things to believe in and to understand. Oh gosh, where do you even start? I mean, we got texts from thousands of years ago. You've got faiths from recently. Okay, well that's a large gap right there. Where do I even start? Am I in this faith because that's what all my family and friends and where I grew up, that's the main faith, or is it something that I am really? Do I align with that? Great. If I don't, then okay, great. How do I find something else? And then if I'm not received well because of that, well, then how do I deal with that? And then how does that shake my faith, right? So there's so many things that we can understand and learn on a faith basis. And all of that starts with self. And I'm going to bring it back to transparency. The more transparent we can be, the more we can understand ourselves, the more that we can bring into everything that I just said.
And in that HQ, we are constantly adding content. Like every month, there is new content that goes in, and the content is based on member feedback. It's based on the theme of the month. Like there's just ever-growing, evergreen content that is available for individuals. And outside of the HQ, we also have Suivera Life, which is our Facebook group. So it's a private Facebook group where individuals can get in and really start to communicate with one another and get that support. And we do a free training at the beginning of every month. And you can interact with us, with Dr. Rosie Kuhn, with Linda Levitt, our education director. And we even have some groups coming on board with us that are external organizations, but we're teaming up so that we can create even more experiential value, and is just continuing to grow in that capacity as well.
Right. And because we know individually we can't be the best at everything. So just as an organization, we can't be the best at everything. So instead of us spending all this time attempting to be something that we're not, why don't we find the people who are really, really good at what they do, bring them on board and enhance the community because of that. Yes. And so we've been really fortunate. So to all you who are joining, you know who you are. We're excited for everything that we're bringing forward.
Exactly. And if you're an organization out there who is a Heart Leader organization with content that you feel would enhance what we do, reach out to us. We are so open to aligning and cross-sharing. So yeah, that's how communities are built. So that's just a sample of what we have. We encourage you to go out and explore suivera.org and see everything that we have, because our whole focus is on really, really helping to uplift our community in love and empower individuals to have their best life. Like that's the goal. And it's through that love, through that heart-centered love. Doesn't mean that we don't invoke intellect. It just means that it comes from that connected space from the heart. And so I really thank you for being willing to share all of that, because when I was being vulnerable and I said, all right, what can we do better? I don't know that we ourselves have done a really fantastic job of informing our community of what is available.
Right. In the end, we're still learning. And so feedback is helpful. And whether it's just simply joining our social media so you can get an inspirational daily post every day, all the way to working one-on-one with us. We literally have something for everyone in that way. And so the best part is just, explore, understand, ask us questions. We're here.
And our goal is to meet people where they are. That's the point. We're all so individually unique that we cannot support a one-size-fits-all package.
Yes.
We know in our hearts, like if we're being authentic, we know in our hearts that it's not going to get people where they need to go. So we need to meet people where they are. And that's why we've gone with the approach that we've gone with. So anything else?
No, just if you get a chance, go ahead and download this month's free transparency journal. And if you are part of the Heart Leader HQ, you'll actually get a training from Amber and myself on the journal itself to actually walk you through it, kind of share our best practices, what we like, what's helped us. So that's a huge benefit if you do enjoy that kind of group feel and group coaching in that sense. Otherwise, it is there. You can download it. All you have to do is just send a message to us and type transparency, and we will send out the journal.
Yes. And we are ever grateful that you tune in and listen and watch. We love the messages that we get from you and love interacting with each and every one of you. We have a great lineup this month around transparency. So make certain to come back here next week and tune in. Until next time, I'm your host, Amber, and I'm here with Austin. And we cannot wait to see you in the Suivera community.